Well, my baby, she done left me alone. Said I was a no good and head out on the road. She ain't gonna see me cry, ain't gonna see me shed no tear, mama, no.
Here comes the drop.
Why would I cry? I got 6 more waiting on that telephone.
Here comes.
That operator praises me, praise my name. He's been working overtime.
There it is.
Since you went away.
I actually, that song is by Rob Linus. He's an up and coming, like I don't know, Southern rock. He doesn't call himself country. Like he's up and coming, like he's playing all these crazy festivals and everything else. He does 100 over 100 shows a year, and he's doing a live. Okay, so they're setting the Guinness Book of World Records for the most amount of shows in the shortest amount of time. So currently, the short and in the most amount of states. So currently, it's 39 states in like 40 days, and they're trying to go for 42 states in 40 days, or 40 states, 40 shows in 40 states in 40 days. So
my voice couldn't handle it. There's no way. That's impressive. I'm down with anybody that's in for the grind.
They're traveling around with like tattoo artists too, and they're doing it like as a huge thing. They're going to have film crews following them, documenting the entire thing. It's going to be absolute mayhem. I don't know how they're going to survive, but that's what they're doing. And I got the chance. I have a friend here that moved from California, and they live here in Dallas, and we've become like really good friends with them, and I've become really good friends with Rob, and watching this like journey. And he was on the podcast, and so it's been really neat to watch this. Like one night he's opening up for Dwight Yoakam, and then the next night he's in a like sleeping in the back of his like van. Like it's just nutty the way that it all works out. And I want to tell a little story, actually, Doug, that you could take a lot out of this. You could take a lot out of this. So I went to one of my favorite bands is Incubus, and I'm a big music guy, as you can probably know. And I went to go see them. I was really excited. I went to see them with my son, and my wife couldn't go. I went to go see him with my son, and he came out singing, and he could barely sing. And I'm like, oh gosh. And I knew immediately. I'm like, okay, the band sounds great. Sounds great. And the next thing you knew, he's like hoarse and can't really talk much or sing much. And I was actually scared for him. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going to do a 2-hour set. And the show was actually one of their most famous albums from beginning to end. And so that was the advertised show. So I'm like, he's got to sing an entire album from beginning to end. I don't know how he's going to do this. So while he's on stage, and this actually goes, I think sales and customer service in general, this to me, this is where my brain went. He ends up like literally saying, guys, I woke up, I felt like absolute, I mean, just can't believe how terrible I feel. My throat is terrible. Everything's horrible. I'm going to get through this, but do me a favor, guys, please help me through this. And I need you to sing. And so when he couldn't sing the notes and he knew he couldn't, he put the microphone right out into the crowd. And even though there are times when live artists do that anyway, he really did it. And you heard an entire crowd of these massive fans, and you felt like you were a part of it. You were along for the journey. And it was so interesting and so cool to watch this guy who has performed in front of millions of people at this point in time since the 90s do this. I think there's a lot to learn from that. I think there's a lot to learn from you, Doug. Doug, I don't know if everybody knows who you are. I know you've been on a lot of podcasts. I know you've been on the Waste No Day podcast. You've been on the Rilla podcast. You've been around. People know you. You're kind of a big deal. But for those that don't, Doug, who are you and what are you doing on the Sales Tales podcast?
Wait, this is live?
We are 100% live, unedited, uncut. You say whatever you want, and there's
I
rules
love it.
of engagement.
The rules of engagement.
Just remember, if you're offended, you're the problem. That's one of my rules.
I was going to say you didn't go over the rules of engagement, Everett,
Don't worry
but
about
I
it.
can
There's
I
4
can
rules.
I can live with that one. Yeah, 4
Yep.
rules. Well, now I know one of them. Maybe 2. We're live, and the rules of engagement are there's really no rules. All right. All right. I always start out with where I come from, especially when we're talking in a format with the trades, because I think it's relevant. I think it's important. I grew up in a small country town. My core values, honor, character, and integrity. I grew up hating sales. My dad hated salespeople. He was the kind of guy that would answer the phone, right? And I'm doing it like this because this is what phones used to look like. They were tethered right to the wall. And a solicitor would call and he'd be like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And then he'd set the phone down and he'd pick it up every few minutes to go, "Oh, yeah, tell me a little more." And I just hated that. And then we lived out in the country. We were on 10 acres. So we didn't get a lot of door-to-door solicitors, but we would get the occasional Jehovah's Witness. And if it was Christmas time, my dad was the kind of guy that would invite them in and show them around the living room, all the Christmas decorations and the Christmas tree. And so I grew up hating sales. But, basketball was my ticket out of town. I played a couple of years of small college basketball in a small town in Kansas. And then I transferred to the University of Colorado. And I was so tired of being broke, Everett. I just decided I was going to go into sales. And I got this idea one night. Couldn't sleep. I was trying to study and not the smartest. I always had just outwork people. And I got this idea, this pizza place. Me and my buddies ate a lot of pizza from this place in Boulder, Colorado. And I got this idea to put a coupon book together. And so I just, massive action. I went down to the restaurant to pick up a pie the next day. And I told the guy, I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I'm going to market your pizzeria and I'm going to sell a lot of customers on coming in here." And he goes, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "Yeah, I'm over here at the school down the street, the business school." And so he goes, "Come back and see me later." And I put this plan together and put a coupon book together. And I was in sales, man. I knew nothing. All I know is I got really good at facing rejection, but I was not the kind of guy that was going to give up. And it took me about 6 months to kind of learn the ropes. I started reading books on sales and influence. And about 6 months into that, I figured out I think I know at least enough to be dangerous. I taught myself how to sell somewhere between 7 and 10 coupon books a night for $20 between the hours of about 5 and 8 p.m. And I wrote an 84-page training manual. I think it was about 60 pages the first time. Ended
on
up being
coupon
about
books? On coupon books?
Every detail, Everett. I think you and I share some of these things. You and I've talked before. By the way, I've been following your career for a number of years now. I think you shared with me that you're the kind of guy that would try putting your tape measure on one side of your belt just to test that out for a bit, right? And then try the other side. We're the kids in junior high that had a million different ways to test our hypothesis.
Just try it.
Anyway,
just try it. See what
happens. The crazy thing about that coupon business, I started making pretty good money. And when I thought I had it figured out, I laid down an audio training CD, burned some CDs. I scripted out the process that I knew was working. And because I grew up in a Baptist home, I literally put little superscripts, just like are in the Bible, like Bible verses. And then I flyered the campus and I started hiring kids. And we practiced everything from how far to stand back from the door, where to put our coupon books under our arms so people coming home wouldn't see solicitors in the neighborhood, how to knock, how to say things when they answered the door, what to wear, everything to the very last detail. And before you know it, by the time I finished college, I had about 500 kids working for me in 7 states. Was signing up entire states of pizzerias. Went from one little ma and pa place in Boulder to signing up entire states of Papa John's and Papa Murphy's. And I just outwork people, man. Just outwork people. And I
think there's a question. I think the audience, what's that? You love what?
I just came to love sales. I don't despise sales. I love salespeople. I hate sleazy salespeople. I don't like snake in the grass salespeople, liars and cheats and thieves. But I respect the grind of the professional salesperson that's out there working to build their business or take care of their family. I respect that. And I absolutely love the profession of sales.
You know what's so ironic about this conversation? Many, many moons ago, I worked for a newspaper marketing company. So most people don't know this. I was in college. And not that I like was the, I didn't go for my, I was anyway. I ended up working for this company that was contracted by the local newspaper in the area. Their job is to keep the subscriber base up so they can show that to their advertisers. And they could say, well, here's how many faces you're going to see every morning. It's going to get delivered. The marketing avenue of this was to, and I did this for a couple of years, was to hire door-to-door high school kids, and we would, or stand at a grocery store, and there's a whole script, and I was doing sales training to 15 and 16-year-olds just trying to work 3 or 4 hours after school. And some of these kids could make some money because for every subscription, they could make between like $7 and like, let's say $9 a subscription. Some of these kids could do 5, 6 subscriptions in 4 hours. And in 2001, this was good money for a kid who, the minimum wage was $5.25 or $5.05. So they could make $20 or they could make $50 or $60. And I had some incredible kids. I employed halfway house kids. I employed kids that were getting out of juvie as well and trying to teach them and being a quasi like father figure, even though I was only 5, 6, 7 years older than them, right?
Yeah.
And we did the same thing and we brainstormed it. And then I worked for a company and then I opened up my own company. It wasn't long lived. Again, you've got to get, it's got to be, but yeah, that's so funny you say that. But you had to go out and get the actual pizzerias and get the people to advertise in the book, revenue stream number one. And then you were able to get and go out and sell the coupon books themselves, which I actually had a friend's father that did exactly that. I had a business doing exactly that. He did it for school fundraisers too. So he'd get the kids at the school fundraisers and he'd say, hey, listen, you sell the book for this, you get this. And it was pure profit. I mean, and everybody makes out because the pizzeria sells more pizza. You sell the coupon book. The kids sells the coupon book. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I started learning a lot about sales. That opportunity afforded me the revenue that I'd never had in my life. I never had any good income. And I started traveling to go see guys like Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Stephen Covey, all when I was in college. I learned more on the mean streets of knocking on doors and getting doors wham slammed in your face. Not interested. No, thanks. We're having dinner. I mean, just over and over and over. And I just realized, number one, as David Goggins would say these days, we've got to develop calluses on our brain to deal with that rejection. We don't know what's coming next, but we definitely have to figure out a way to be prepared for that. But I started learning about different types of influence techniques. But one of the things I did, you got these magazine salespeople knocking on doors, traveling around the country, acting like they go to school there. So every crew that we had on every different college campus, they had to be in uniform. So uniform was important. Their uniform was college t-shirt for their local school, right? And then I had them submit that they were taking course loads that semester, and they had to show me their enrollment, and then they had to carry their student ID. And so we would actually show student ID. So now we're proving who we are, who we say we are. And then we've got product from a local pizzeria. And then I went out there and hired an attorney, got an independent contractor agreement written up, got the contract written. And then I realized that sales was about a transference of emotion. And then we also had to lower risk. So we had no expiration and a buy it back guarantee. If you try this pizzeria, you don't think it's the best pizza, you're not going to use this coupon book, call the number on the back of the book and we'll give you your money back. And so we lowered risk, right? Sales is an earning of trust, a lowering of risk, and a transference of emotion. It really is those three things. There's a lot that goes under that umbrella of those three things. But I figured that out at a young age and started having a little bit of success.
What's so funny is that so much has changed, Doug, in those years, but the core of the habits of what people actually purchase on and how they feel comfortable, whether it's they feel comfortable with a brand and that lowers their risk, or they feel comfortable with a person, those innate feelings, thoughts have remained the same throughout. I think even going back, and you're going back 20 years, right? I mean, you're talking 20 years ago.
30.
And I know everybody 30 years ago, everybody wants to say, yeah. So here you are, you're in college, you start this business and you become successful with the business. Now what?
So, well, number one, that business afforded me the opportunity to go see the greats, right? They were on a lot of late night infomercials. I mentioned a few of them, Robbins to Covey to Zig. And then Tom Hopkins, right? Started seeing Tom Hopkins. He started talking about, he starts talking about the importance of the words that we choose, right? So in our content today, we talk about the Wordsmith program where we're focused on the words that we share matter, but it's also how we share them. We talk about something we call rare listening. We've got to think about how are we interpreting, how are we listening, how are we breathing life into so-called objections or area of concern, letting people know that you see them, you hear them. And then the words not only matter, but the way in which we use them. That's the passion. That's the voice inflection, the tone. It's a performance in sales, right? Not to trick people, not to manipulate them, but to persuade them to make a decision that often they don't realize is in their best interest. But what that led me to one day was a meeting with a guy that had some restaurants. And he said, Doug, you're going to keep building these door-to-door crews now that you've graduated? And I'm like, no, the crews fall out every summer. They fall apart. Kids go home for summer break. The weather turns cold. Kids quit, right? It gets too hot. It's 120 degrees in Vegas and Phoenix. And these kids, they're not built like they were used to. And kids are quitting, right? So anyway, we opened 9 restaurants in 1 year here in Denver, Colorado. I still live south of Denver. But 6 Papa Murphy's Steak and Bakes, 3 Subways. And then one day on the golf course, I wasn't about that life. I didn't grow up with a set of sticks. Didn't really know how to golf. Was training a new GM one day, and my business partner met a guy that had opened an HVAC company down in Colorado Springs. And before you
had owned all these restaurants at the time, like you had franchises.
I was in restaurants at the time. I'd been doing that a few years, and then put some money into a fledgling HVAC company. We grew quickly. That turned into a training agreement. Traveled the country, did a lot of training here in our industry. What you won't hear in that story, Everett, is I never did focus on the technical side of the business. Now, I've been in the industry 19 years. I know enough to be dangerous, but all of my technicians at my 2 different companies, which we did win Lennox Partner of the Year twice at my company in Denver, and we did that in very short order. My guys used to make fun of me that all of my tools said play school. And I know that some people listening to a podcast like this can say, oh, well, I can't take this guy seriously if he doesn't know how to turn the wrench. Listen, I grew up working on tractors and lawnmowers and dirt bikes and changing my own brakes and transmission, but I didn't enjoy it. My father was very difficult to get along with. I didn't enjoy it. And when I got into the trades, I decided I was going to focus on the business side, the scaling side, the communication side. How do we schedule more calls? What do we say once the phone number, once that phone number rings? And then what do we do when we're on our way to the call? What does the call ahead sound like? What's the door knock? What's the entryway conversation? How do we get them to the kitchen table? What do we say and how do we say it once we get them there? I focused on that. I have a service manager many years ago. His name's Chris McCollum. And one day in a meeting, he goes, you know what you are? You're strategically incompetent. And so I ask the men and the women in the trades now that know the technical side, I say, just imagine your life. If over the last, I've been in the trades 19 years, imagine how long you've been in it. If not one single time did you actually have to go out and run a call and fix a furnace, work on an air conditioner, charge a system. But beyond that, as you went into ownership, if you're in ownership or leadership, imagine never once taking one phone call from your staff to troubleshoot a system that wouldn't start. I've never had to take that call. And what I've done, it doesn't mean I've worked any less. You typically work about 12 hours a day for many decades now. I nearly work 7 days a week, every single week. And I've just focused on how do we effectively communicate our brand, our story, our value, and how do we get customers to choose us based on that versus a cheap price? Well, and so that's what I've worked my life on.
That's an interesting point. And I want to say 2 things. One, does an architect actually have to build the house?
Good point.
No, it does not. He does not have to build the house. Okay, I worked in a world where, and I have a master HVACR license. I understand the technical aspect of it. I can build a system from scratch. I can look at it. I know exactly what to do.
Yep.
But I would point at it. Like, Could I physically go and do it? Yes, I could, but that's not my specialty, right? That's not where I've ever excelled. So, and here's the key. And for anybody that is an operator, they'll tell you that the biggest issue that they have is actually trying to get out of the truck. You designed it so that you were out of the truck to begin with. So anybody who says, well, they're turning the wrenches and blah, blah, blah. Well, listen, these days, like, you can delegate that responsibility. The reality is that just like any other business, just like any other trade, okay, unfortunately, what's the percentage of tradesmen that end up going out of business because they don't learn the communication piece of it, because they don't learn the operations piece of it? So they go out of business. They go out of business.
I'll share something else with you too, Everett. And this really kind of painted myself into a corner, because I see this happen all over the country. I've trained about 1,000 companies and nearly 7,000 tradesmen, 7,000 blue collar tradesmen. And I will say this, the one thing that kept me up at night was I had to work on building my business in such a way I was dependent upon the people in the field that could do the heavy lifting, so to speak, because if those men left me or we had some type of mutiny and everybody walked out, guess what? I don't know how to go out there and install the air conditioner the next day. And so what that did is it held me to a higher level of accountability in the way that I treated my people, the way that we recruited, the way that we trained, the way that we served, the way that we got to know their spouse and their kids, and how we provided the absolute best career path for them, ongoing training, consistent training, and the way that we worked with them with their schedules and their 401ks and everything else, so that they wouldn't take a job from somebody that gave them a business card at a supply house for $1 or $2 more. We had to make sure that we had a stack of resumes of the best guys. And then as soon as our guys got into our program, we had a rule. You had to become NATE certified every 6 months. From the date of your hire, you had to get one of your NATE certifications. First your core, and then your gas, your heat, and then your dual fuel hybrid, right? You had to get your air conditioning every 6 months. In addition to all the effective communication and all of that type of leadership training we were providing our staff, we also required them to get all of their NATEs, and they had to do ongoing training. Our guys were at Johnstone constantly, and we had rules like you sit on the front row, you go in full uniform, you dress to impress. Those were recruiting opportunities for our organization, because the way our men showed up at those events, and women, one of our best installers, a female. So I didn't even mean to say, hey, it's just men out there. Man, I'm telling you, we can recruit. I don't think there's a labor shortage, honestly. I think there's a leadership shortage. I think there's an inspiration shortage. The best guys in our industry are already working. They're not sitting around on the couch on Craigslist looking for their next job to work for 6 weeks. The best guys are already working, and they're training usually Monday through Friday, every day of the week, on their communication skills.
Wood Floor Chuck says big difference between being self-employed and being a business owner. Delegation. Yes. Good job. Yeah, definitely, Chuck. Yeah. So okay, but so you own a Josh Crouch said you aged yourself by saying Craigslist.
Josh Crouch. Hey, by the way, I'm not sure if you mentioned that podcast. One of the first guys that ever actually gave me a shot on the airwaves, Tersh and Josh, the Service Business Mastery podcast, two good friends of mine. What's up, Josh? Hey, Josh, the fact is, I am old.
You don't look old.
Know. If we put me and Josh Crouch in a lineup right next to each other and started taking bets on what the age group is, I don't know. Josh, maybe we'll do that one. We'll see who's old.
Yeah. You don't look old, and you've got you're a thunderstorm. I said this, you're a thunderstorm of energy. You have a lot of energy, and I love that it's infectious, and I feel that. I have a lot of that sort of baked into my core, and I think it takes passionate people to also influence other people, and to I think it takes passionate people to actually accomplish most stuff. I think it takes, and what's weird is that you're kind of a unicorn, because you're most systems and process oriented people tend to probably not be as fiery because they're more systematic. So they're kind of more math than, in my experience. I'm speaking.
No, you're right.
Are more.
You're absolutely right.
Our
left brain, right brain. Sorry to interrupt. Left brain, right brain activity, right? Somehow, some way, I've been gifted with both, where I love the psychology of sales and influence. I love the performance part of it, right? And how we transfer that emotion. I am a very passionate person. Maybe it's because I grew up playing sports and, hollering across gymnasiums and hayfields. But I think also that part where Everett, you and I share that skill set, that curse perhaps that we analyze every little thing, and it's very hard to shut it off.
Yeah.
I partnered with a friend of mine from high school. We got an all-natural sleep aid into Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and Hy-Vee. We outsell 5-Hour Energy 2-to-1. I put a process together to sell into Walmart and these massive retailers. And, it's funny. It's like I saw, wood floor, Chuck, he says, we're in a different industry, but it's the same. It is the same. Sales is the same. We got to earn trust, lower risk, communicate with passion, stand behind our work. And if we don't believe that the organization that we work for, no matter what our product is, isn't going to stand behind it, there's no way we can be a good person and sell with passion, right? We've got to believe in our product, and we got to believe that, hey, we're going to make mistakes occasionally. When the rubber meets the road is when we go back out. Do we fix it? Do we force them to say they're going to get an attorney or call the Call for Action News or give us, light us up with 1-star reviews? We've got to be willing to go out there and take care of customers at a higher level than our competitors could even dream of. And if we'll do that and we'll consistently share with our team that's going to be the first step in sales. Because it doesn't matter how good the words are that we're sharing or what our sales process is, if our people don't deliver it with a passion and a conviction.
I want to rein you in because I want to get to the timeline here. So you go from owning a bunch of restaurants, you meet a guy on a golf course. Hey man, let's buy an air conditioning company. You do that, you scale that. You'd already written training manuals because you did that for the coupon book business. Now you apply that, you go around, you train, I guess it was at EGIA or something like that, but we're with Lennox and, right. I mean,
exactly. It was actually, we were the first Bryant factory authorized dealer in the state of Colorado. Okay. They also, the Carrier brand, Low Miller and Company, they put us in touch with the folks out in Indianapolis, and we got a training agreement with Carrier and Bryant and invested the next 3 or 4 years traveling the country and training. Worked with Mitsubishi Electric and trained the Daikin national sales team, one of the largest, with Stevens Equipment Supply. Just had a lot of incredible experience. You just never know where the trades are going to take you. But I will say this, when I invested in that HVAC company, it was the fall of 2006. And the first thing I did was start learning the business. I started going out back in the shop and learning about how air conditioning works, started doing some ride-alongs with our technicians and our installers. So let's not mistake the fact that I never actually bought my own tools and ran my own service calls or did my own installs. I've been out there in the field plenty. I
think you keep going back to that, but that's not like, I mean, I get it. And maybe that because it lives as a chip, because it may live on a, I'm not the greatest at diagnosing it. It's like, maybe it lives on a chip on your shoulder and lives on a chip on my shoulder, and you overanalyze everything. And yeah, tons of tradespeople are going to listen to this, and you want to let them know, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Totally get it. But like, you went from owning this business and now you go back into training, and you do this for a long time while operating the business. And now, okay, let's fast forward. You develop the sleep aid, you get that into Walmart, you make bazillions of dollars. Okay. Walk me through this now. You own this large, the library of training that you have at Synergy Learning Systems, which you started as a passion, really, as what I view it as, is ridiculous. Okay. So, it's not a business building podcast, but I got to cover this because it's insane. I want to tell it from my perspective, and then I'll let you. So you have you have these 4 facets, right? It's like customer service, sales, and there's communications baked in there. And
we have four different divisions of the company: call center training, sales training, tech training, right? And then leadership training. I've been a 7 Habits leadership instructor for the better part of 15 years.
Which is nuts. You have an online library of professionally done videos that people can go in and watch. They go to classes, subscribe. You're through Service Nations Alliance. Very quickly, you've scaled this training organization, and everybody that I have interacted with that has been a part of this training has walked away like, I mean, obviously, right? What is wrong with you? What is going on inside your head?
Listen,
now?
It's a fair question, Everett. I'm by far anything not even close to perfect. I mean, I outwork people. I often say that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stole my line. which is I'm always going to be the hardest worker in the room. And listen, that's not always the best thing. Sometimes I have a really hard time shutting it off, despite the fact that I have an all-natural sleep aid. By the way, here's a little plug. Sleep Sauna. We out till 5 Hour Energy.
Do you
2 to 1.
Do you still own that business?
I'm not involved in it, but yeah, partial ownership. Yeah.
Wow.
Minority ownership. I was the COO there for many years, got us into the Walmart, Walgreens, and CVS with my buddy Jason. But here's the thing, despite the fact that I have an all-natural sleep aid that works, that has incredible testimonials and is in mass retail, I'm telling you, I have a hard time sleeping. I'm lucky to get 6 hours. And the reason for that is I can't shut it off. I have this destiny, this legacy that I want to leave in our industry, that I helped people that were scared to death of sales, that didn't see themselves as a presenter, that hate the conflict, that don't want the rejection, that I've been working my ass off for the better part of 30 years, 19 years in the trades, to communicate effectively without raising sales resistance, actually keeping it low. Suppressing sales resistance, because I think the number one reason that we don't offer the indoor air quality products, or the, whatever it is, if you're on HVAC, if you're in plumbing, if you're electrical, if you're in flooring, there's always things that we can offer as upgrades. And it's not just because we want to earn more commission on the sales side. It's because we know that when we install, when we offer, when we recommend, when we sell a better product, the homeowner, the person, the end user is going to be happier. There's no one that's going to replace their 80% efficient single stage furnace that's going to be happy with that new one. They're not going to be happy with the utility bill. They're not going to be happy with the stratification. They're not going to be happy that their upstairs primary suite is just as hot as it was before and that their theater room is just as cold. Nobody's going to be happy with that, right? They got a new furnace, and now all they got is a whole new set of problems that they had before. They just dropped another $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 on a single stage furnace, right? So my thing is, how do we lower sales resistance? How do we help people get out there and implement it? And that's really what our virtual program is about. Whether it's a live event or a virtual program, we've got to work on solving the challenge of implementation. But if the people that are plugging into our programs, mine, yours, Everett, anybody else, don't believe in it, and they just hate their life because every day they go, oh God, here we go again. Homeowners are going to tell me they got to get 3 bids, and they're not familiar with my brand, and they need the cheapest price, and they got to talk to their spouse and pray about it and sleep on it and talk to their neighbor about it and the handyman down the street about it, and we're $5,000 higher than the last guy with the same serial number. If we don't figure out a way to handle that and lower that resistance, we're just going to hate our jobs on the sales side.
One thing I want to say, because I sat in for a couple hours at the Service Nations Alliance building at Doug's training last week or week and a half ago, and I liked how during your training you have these recordings of like actual recordings in a business of CSRs taking phone calls and how terrible. And it's funny because I don't think it's good that it's good that when they listen, they hear it and it's somebody that's not in the classroom, right? And they can say to themselves, oh man, like I've taken calls like that before. Oh man, that did not sound good. Reflection on your inflection and how you respond to somebody is so illuminating. And the fact that you have the, the wrong ways to here's the recording. So, and I will tell you this, I have had to have these tough conversations with like sales reps and customer service reps in the past, and then they're listening to their own call, and this can be painful. So it's good that you have other people's calls where they can reflect on it. And I think there's more sort of learning there, but anyway.
Every detail matters, Everett. Every word we share matters. Every way that we kind of breathe. I call this psychological air. Imagine like, if you're drowning and somebody grabbed the top of your head and they pulled you up above the water. Most of us don't feel seen, heard. We don't feel listened to. And so those of us in the trades are so deathly afraid of rejection and sales resistance, and that we don't even want to be in sales in the first place. We're afraid to toe into these conversations. What I share is when we go into what I call rare listening, where we repeat, we acknowledge the emotion or feeling the person must be having in that situation. We rephrase, we relate, we express only at the certain time, like Covey taught in Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. let's give you an example in sales. If somebody says, yeah, Doug, I think we're going to go with your business, and tell you what, let me think about it over the weekend, and I'll give you a call next week. Our knee-jerk reaction, and most of what we've been trained, is for us to say horrific things like this. Well, do you have a problem with me? You got a problem with my recommendation? You have a problem with my company? And it's like, the only people that I've ever said you got a problem to is somebody that I'm ready to fight, right? I grew up in a country town where you handled your business out behind the woodshed, right? When somebody says you got a problem, or God forbid, it's a female that we're speaking to, and we say something like this: do you have an issue? You got issues with me? You're asking a woman if she has issues, and you're asking a man if you got a problem. I'm going to say, let's breathe life into that area of concern so that that person can decompress and realize that we're listening. How does that sound? I would just say, well, Everett, it sounds like this is a big decision and you're not quite ready to move forward. Am I hearing you correctly? See, that's going to keep sales resistance down. If I say anything but that, that's what they were expecting. If I come out and I go, oh, well, you don't need to think about it. Our price is fair. Those techniques can come down the line. I still wouldn't say any of that, but I'm certainly not going to hit them right in the face as soon as they tell me that. That's their job. I call that the customer's fiduciary responsibility, and we all have it. We have a duty and a responsibility to our own checkbook, and so do our homeowners, to get the most for the least, right? That's our fiduciary responsibility. So if we're walking into these sales calls, technician calls, flooring calls, whatever it might be, thinking that the homeowner is just going to lay down and go, oh, wow, you're $10,000 higher than I expected. I tell you what, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Even if they think you're fair, it's their responsibility to give a little pushback. Otherwise, they're going to have a little something, and I know the audience could fill in the last word for me: buyer's remorse.
Wait a minute,
right?
Doug. Are you saying that not every call that a technician or a sales rep goes on, the homeowner has a checkbook open on the table ready to write it? Is that what you're telling me?
I think we're on to something here, Everett. Hey, by the way, so I was in this house one time. Can I start with that?
Thank you. Finally.
So I was in this house. Actually, I've got to start a little bit before. So this was new when I was in the trades. This was back in like 2007. I started in the fall of 2006. Already hiring a sales team. We hired this guy. His name's Scotty the Bulldog. I won't tell you his last name because he's in the trades. He has a business and he might not want people to know. We used to call him the Bulldog. But Scotty the Bulldog was going to run a sales lead. I'm riding in the passenger seat, okay? I'm doing the ride along. I'm going to go evaluate Scotty. We pull up to this house. It's a single family ranch style home, one of those homes with one garage, right? And then it's got that sidewalk that runs right in front of the bay window in the living room, and then the one step up the door. Most of us can probably picture that rancher, right?
Sure.
As we walk up the driveway, we can hear the homeowners inside the home. The bay window is open. The air conditioner's not working. It's about 98 degrees. It's the summertime, 2007. And me and Scotty are walking up to this house, and we hear an argument begin to ensue back behind that wall in the kitchen. And it sounds a little something like this. The woman says something like, well, I don't know why you're saying that to me. You're the one that always buys. And he goes, what are you talking about? We were down at the furniture store and we said we were just shopping and you bought half the store. And then she's like, oh, you're one to talk. We can hear all this. We literally have not rung the bell. We're walking past that bay window. We can hear them back in the kitchen. They don't know we're there. And then we hear the gal say, oh, really? Well, how about when we were leaving the game and we went by the dealership and 4 hours later, you have a brand new truck that we didn't need and we didn't have a payment. Now we do. And about that time, I hear she goes, well, guess what? I'm not buying anything tonight. And he goes, well, guess what? We can go this whole summer without air conditioning for all I care. And about that time, me and Scotty the Bulldog go, ding dong.
Yeah.
About 7 seconds later, that front door swings open and it's the wife. And she goes, well, hello, gentlemen. Step on inside. Come on in. Acts like the sweetest thing. Well, let me fast forward about 3 hours in addition to what we would call the porch light close, where they just kept looking at each other. Everything made so much sense. We did the full manual J. We put on the entire show. We did an entire process, right? We get down to the end, we ask for the order, we ask for the order, we ask for the order. And of course, that takes, I always say, build in about 20 minutes at the end, because you never want to just hammer them. Always breathe life into their areas of concern, give them psychological air, make sure you understand the true concern, come back, build your value back, make sure it's like I say, circle the wagon all the way around the mountain before you come back, ask for the order again. Finally, you can just tell they're itching to buy, but they made this pact that they were not going to buy, they were not going to sign.
You didn't break the pact, and you knew the pact up front.
We knew it. Most of the time you don't know it, although I would say to everybody listening to this, just know there are pacts being made that people are saying, we're going to think about it, we're not buying tonight, we're not signing anything tonight, we're not going to finance tonight, we're going to pay this out of our own checkbook. But I will say this, the way something begins is not the way something is going to end. That's our responsibility to persuade those homeowners to choose us in disregard of the fact that we're going to be higher than the cheap guys out there. So what do? We used the porch light technique on them, where we got up, we left the home, we let those two talk, and I can almost guarantee you exactly what happened in that house. They looked at each other and they were like, well, they are really great, and they have a buy it back guarantee, and they'll let us try the system for a year. And if it doesn't do everything they promised, then they'll buy the system back. I mean, we're eliminating risk, we're earning their trust, we're building the value. And guess what? We were outside for about 7 minutes. They call it the porch light. They flip the porch light. We come inside, and guess what they said, Everett? You can guess.
They said, hey, why don't you go ahead and do this job tomorrow?
Just about. You know what? Every time you do the porch light and you come back in, the homeowner says something like this. It's a softball. They go, okay, well, we decided that we are thinking about doing this, but if it doesn't work the way you said, then, and it's like, that was what we just convinced you over the last 3 hours. And so, yes, they said, okay, when can you do the install? And we're like, let's call our install manager.
I think I've found in most cases, having run 6,000 or 7,000 calls, I think I've found that you're right. Like there's usually something small where they're like, hey, remember that duct over there? And remember, I didn't get any air in there. It's X amount of dollars. What do you think, guys? Can you just throw it in there for us? And of course, what general manager or what manager is not going to go, yeah, go ahead and, go ahead and do the duct, and look, and I have worked for companies. Okay. This is going back a ways. And I think this part of what we do has changed somewhat, because I think that companies are willing, because of Google reviews and all this other stuff. I think good companies are willing to go a little bit further to gain the trust of the customer than they would have, where I've worked for companies that were hardlined, like, nope, that the price is the price. And we'll lose it all. And we'll walk out of the house because they're unwilling to go, yeah, I'll do that extra duct for you. I mean, and I'm not kidding you. And I'm not saying there's a wrong philosophy. I do understand that there's people that have this posturing of price integrity, and my views on this have changed. This is the only thing that has really changed, really philosophically, over the last several years, because we'd be dumb to say that people's buying habits have not changed. Okay. When I came in 15 years ago, the rug was vacuumed and the house smelled wonderful. Oh, we have somebody coming over tonight. Somebody's coming tonight. And now they're like, hey, can you do this like remote? Like is there an app I can go on that I can like do this? I mean, you have to set the precedent. Of course, those are things you have to do, but habits have changed. You might disagree with me, but I'm just saying that's my observation.
I don't know if I would necessarily disagree, but I will say this. I think most of the companies that I've worked with, they're already really good at discounting. They don't need me to share with them how to do that. So I don't teach discounting, but listen, I'm also not going to say, hey, if things are really slow and you need to throw in that additional duct or something, or one of my favorite things is, I'll just give you a technique that we've used at my company where we won Lennox Partner of the Year twice, is if we get down to the end and you're like, man, if we've tried everything, and I don't mean like we've just kind of towed into it, but if we've tried everything,
you've uncovered every stone, and you're like, hey man, listen, I want to use you, Doug, so badly, dude, but like I'm trying to justify this cost right here. Can you help me out right here? And then what will you?
I think price integrity, then you could do something like there's an old school technique, or maybe it's new school, I don't know, but the yard sign, right? If they'll help you out with a little bit of marketing and put the yard sign in there for 30 days, then I can
100%.
offer you a $250 savings or something
Yeah.
like that. But
I'll,
a lot of
Doug,
times people just want to win, right? They just want to win something,
sometimes,
even if it's $100.
Doug, I will tell, and I manage a team, 15, 20 guys out in the field. I would tell them, I would get on the phone with the home. I say, do me a favor. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to crunch some numbers here. I know you want me to sharpen my pencil. I get it. Do me a favor. Do I have your Scout's honor that over the course of the next year, should everything go, and I meant it, should everything go the way that it's supposed to go, and you are enjoying your experience and you're enjoying the system, would you do me a favor? Would you refer somebody to us? Would you, because for us, that's,
Sure.
we have to spend
Sure.
money on advertising, everything else. Would you do me a favor? If everything goes as well, would you tell a family member, friend, or neighbor or somebody? And it's a little thing. And honestly, that reciprocal sort of effect, I think goes a long way. Then they're almost a part of the family. It's like, well, I told Everett that I was going to go ahead and give him a referral. And I think that maybe they'll forget about it. Yeah.
Well, I want to share something with you as a business owner. When I got back into the trades, I had the first business, and then we went and did a lot of training. And then I got back onto the contractor side in the fall of 2015. It took us just over 14 months to win Lennox Partner of the Year. That company I didn't invest in was gifted a percentage of that business to come in with my intellectual property. I went in 1 day a week, and every day, that 1 day a week, there was an assignment for the team to work on in every department, whether it was the call center, the sales, the technicians, the leadership. And so then we would come back in and we would do meetings and we would practice what they had an entire week to work on. And this is really how we've developed our virtual training, where we have a 52-week path to mastery. But I can share this with you when it comes to discounting. We from all outside and intensive purposes, we look great. We were putting trucks on the road. We're buying 3 Dodge vans at a time. We're putting Mastercraft shelving. We're inventorying them with $10,000 to $12,000 worth of inventory. We're growing like mad, right? Well, all of a sudden we hit a little bit of slow time, and I didn't realize this. Looking back, I should have known this, but we started using our distribution as the bank, and so everyone was getting paid. The truck payments were getting paid. The website people were getting paid. Everybody was getting paid. Who wasn't getting paid was Lennox and Daikin. We carried Daikin as our second line, and just 30 days after we walked across the stage in Las Vegas and took home the hardware for Lennox Partner of the Year, all of a sudden, we started hearing like, oh man, we got a little bit of challenge at a supply house. Before you know it, we were cut off. And so after I negotiated some things with our major manufacturers and distributors in Lennox and in Daikin, and we were even behind with Johnstone on parts and supplies, it took us about a year to dig out of that hole. And thank God there were some people in the higher ups that gave us a chance to open up our account. So I'm not going to say that it's all wine and chocolates and roses. Sometimes life can smack you upside the head, and you got to double down and say, what are we going to do? And I can say this, Everett, when it comes to discounting, what we did at our company was we doubled down on training. Instead of being in there 1 day a week, I started going in there every single day of the week. We got better. And I made this determination. I said, if you feel like you have to offer a discount or you have to waive a diagnostic investment in order for us to schedule the call, and you tell me that's what has to happen around here, then you're not a good fit. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a bad fit for our logo and what we're doing and what we're going to have to work our way out of this debt. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, without offering a single discount and without waiving or including a single diagnostic investment, we were able to maintain all of that, pay off nearly $500,000 in debt, get current, and like a phoenix rising from the ashes, Everett, 1 year later in 2018, we won Lennox Partner of the Year again. So I can speak from that perspective.
I think that there's so much there, but do you think that there are unique factors to that circumstance, or do you feel or think that any company could do that?
No, you know what the unique factor was, Everett? I am a madman. I just outwork people, and I was not going to take any excuses. And if there's anything that I excel at, it's recruitment. How do I recruit? So when people would say, I was never leveraged by the staff saying, oh, well, we're not going to do it. It's like, we have a family. And by the way we treated people, nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to leave that and just go be a number somewhere else. So we treated our people like family. We took care of our people first, customers second. Some people say customers come first. Are you kidding me? If you berate your team and you're not investing in your team, and you're not making their life somewhere where they want to go to work every day, how in the world could we expect them to go out and take care of our people, like meaning our customers? People come first.
Yes. And I think Billy Stevens said the same thing. And I'm starting to see, obviously not starting, but I subscribe to this, right? You build your culture, you build your people. And then I think that that's actually, that influences your customers. If your employees like where they're working, they're going to go into a home, a business, and represent you in a way that's going to be positive to you. And then you will go ahead and through like a transfer of belief, it'll go right into that customer. They'll be like, man, you guys are, I've had somebody say to me once, I work on my old company, say, man, you are on message. Like service technician said something, I said the same thing. It was like all the way through. And it was like, hey, this is what we do here. Money back guarantee, all the good stuff, the money back guarantees, the warranties, all the good stuff. I think people are short-sighted right now. I think people are short-sighted because they don't want to do the extra stuff that is hard to do, which is deliver amazing service and do things the right way. I think people are lazy now because we've got everything is at a click of a button. We forget that. And unfortunately, you end up with a subpar product, so to speak. And
Everett, here at Synergy, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, I agree with what you just shared, and it is about the passion. All right, go ahead.
Doug, I think your signal is a little.
Oh, it's not my signal, Everett. I'm just kidding. Are we okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah. That's your signals. I can hear you. Your signals. Anyway, I'll let you. Hopefully it'll refresh and come back at it. All
right.
But what I
can log back out and log back in. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You hear me? Okay.
I think they're saying it's okay. Okay, go ahead.
I feel like the Verizon guy. Can you hear me now? All right. Here's what I want to share. Everett, you were just spot on. If we don't put our people in a position where they love what they do and they feel cared for, right? And I don't want to be too soft here, but at the same time, if we don't treat our people the way we would want to be treated, where they're not feeling fulfilled, where they don't feel like we also have their best interest and their dreams and goals in mind, then how in the world could we expect them to go out and serve our customers in a meaningful way where they're selling with passion? I give you an example of what I mean by this, because this is the foundation. We have 6 foundation of effective communication. And by the way, if you guys subscribe to the HVAC Business Journal, if you look us up, we just had a 2-part series, a column on, I think, August 1st, and then another one, part 2, is on I guess, September 1st. Everett, now I lost you. I'm going to keep going just in case you guys can still hear me. This is one of our training books, and I always ask people, let's just say, and this isn't possible, let's just say that every word in there, somehow there was a worldwide competition. They said, what are the best scripts for a sales process, a call center process, a tech process? And let's just say that book had won it. Now that's not possible, and there is no such contest, but let's just say that it was. My question to people is it possible for somebody to take that script that was award-winning? You back now, Everett? I just kept going. I'm gonna try to hold. Okay. Is it possible? What my question was, Everett, if this was somehow to win the award for the best sales script ever in the world, in the history of the world, and obviously it's not possible, and that didn't happen. But if it did, is it possible for any individual to take that same script without rearranging a single word and make it the absolute worst? Yes. Is it possible for somebody to get a job on Broadway where some show has been the #1 show on Broadway for 20 years and to replace somebody with a new actor and them to make that same script the worst? It's absolutely possible. I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we come into the facility in the morning, the guys like to play a little game of grab ass, right? Or grab somebody's keys and hide them. All right. So let's just say, I don't know if you guys have ever played that at any of your organizations, Everett, but we would have, if a guy left his keys laying around, all of a sudden his van would disappear. So the meeting ends and his van looks like it got stolen. So our guys would, if a guy's keys are missing, his van's missing after the meeting, he would say something to one of the guys like, did you steal my van? Do you have my van? Do you have my keys? So I just want you to imagine 5 words. Let's say that a guy looks back at you, Everett, your van's missing, and I say to you, I didn't steal your van. Those are 5 words in a certain order. Everett, do you think I can change the meaning of those words just without even rearranging them, just by the voice inflection? Now, if I say, I didn't steal your van. I didn't steal your van. What am I saying, Everett? I didn't steal it, but
you're saying we have the same training. Although I don't use the same line. I use the
okay.
I didn't shoot that dog. But yes.
Oh yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
same
I didn't
thing.
shoot
So
that
for all of
dog.
yours, I didn't shoot that dog. I didn't shoot
I
the
didn't shoot
dog.
that
What'd you shoot?
dog.
So same thing with the van.
Shot
My
a cat.
point is, if there's a million words, if there's a quarter of a million words in my process, your process, anybody could either make that the best process on the planet or the absolute worst. What it comes down to is our mindset and our ability to perform the words off the page, right?
Because
And so to me, that's what sales is.
Because you suffer from the same I don't know what we want to call it. Probably curse. We'll call it a curse, because we suffer from the same curse, and constantly thinking and constantly moving. And you expect a lot of people. And one thing that I'll say to people from a personal note of knowing Doug is that Doug needs to be prepared, and then expects his people to be prepared. And I'm guessing that has to, there's some people who are just unprepared people. They just don't value being prepared. They want to just wing it. Tell me about a situation where you've had maybe a tough termination of that. Maybe, I'd like to hear, like, what would somebody who you fired, maybe it was a tough firing, what would they say? Or what would be your experience in that, where you fired somebody because you know what, they didn't want to do X, Y, and Z, or maybe you were too quick to fire. Maybe you could have, maybe you feel like, maybe I didn't prepare them enough. Maybe I didn't put enough into them. I'd like to hear a story of, and the reason, and it's from sort of a selfish point, because I'm really wondering, when you hold people to such a high standard, you hold yourself to a high standard. Sometimes you can piss people. I piss people off a lot, Doug.
Yeah. I would assume that you and I probably aren't everyone's cup of tea, right? But I also know that's a surefire way to fail, trying to be all things to all people. If we're strong here in our core, and we truly believe that what we're doing is not to harm anybody else, to help other people get to where they want in life, I don't think there's anything wrong with passion, although sometimes people take that the wrong way. I will say this, one of the things that I communicate to every single person that I've ever worked with, or that's ever come to work with me, is that I can't want it more for you than you want it for you. My daughter is a very accomplished athlete. She played 4 years of college basketball, but she had some stints where her mind wasn't right in high school, if you will. And she was kind of starting down that victim mentality. And I can just remember, raising children. I said something to her, name's Jordan. And I said, Jordan, there's some things that I want you to know about your dad. And the number one thing is, every day you go out there, I want you to play like it's your very last game. Winning isn't everything. Wanting to is. And so to me, it's about effort. And this is a mantra that I've repeated in every organization that I've ever been involved with. It is about effort. If I don't see the effort, then I can't take responsibility for that. I got to see the effort. I never expect perfection. I would never expect 100% close rates. In fact, I believe there's about 30% of the market that will never invest in a premium product or service. They're always going to go cheap, and they'll risk life and limb and the life of their family to go with somebody cheap. And I can't imagine being that person when it comes to my water, my gas, my electricity, and my carbon monoxide and those sort of things, right? But I can say this, here's the answer to your question, Everett. It's a two-part answer. One, when I invested in that company in Colorado Springs, we very quickly then bought another small company that had some service techs. A couple months later, we bought a giant company that had a commercial division. We didn't know anything about commercial. And about a month in, we realized we were in over our head, and we were going to have to shut down the commercial residential new construction division. And so at a young age, at about 32 years old, I met with well over 50 men and let them know that they didn't have a job the next day. They didn't know where they were going to be able to put groceries on their table. And I just said to myself in those moments, I'm never going to do it this way ever again. And so what I started doing was creating systems and processes and checklists so that anytime that I hired, I clearly laid out the expectations. And so now I don't think I ever terminate somebody too soon, but I will say for our viewing audience, I think we hold on to people far too long. And the reason that is we don't set upfront agreements with our staff. When they come in, what I do is I clearly outline it from the company manual to the employment agreement, to the compensation structure, to what's going to be expected from the way they look, the way they dress, the way they act, the way they smell, the way their beard is trimmed, the way their hat's on straight, where they're only wearing company logos. Every uniform, if we're paying for them, I expect them to be clean. I expect a badge. All of those things, right? As soon as I see something not happening, I'm going to go over and I'm going to put my arm around them. I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that your badge is missing this morning. Let's make sure that we don't come into the company-wide meeting. Company-wide meetings every single Tuesday morning are full dress rehearsals. If we can't get it together on a Tuesday morning, the one day of the week that I'm here, then how in the world could we expect that you're going to be in full dress rehearsal the way you look, act, smell, talk, everything the rest of the week? And so what I've designed is a way to say, anytime somebody starts to get off track, I have a sit down with him. And Dr. Covey from the 7 Habits shared with me many years ago when he learned that I was in the trades. He said, Doug, you can be efficient with machines. You can never be efficient with people. And so what I've realized is when I'm going to sit down with somebody, Everett, I'm going to line out exactly what they're doing well. In management, they call this the sandwich. The first side of the bun is the good. The meat is the real meat of the conversation. And the back side of the bun is, I really hope this works out. We want you to be here part of this long term. Okay. So then what I would say is when I sit down with somebody, I'm going to block enough time. Maybe that's an hour, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, but I'm never going to rush a meeting like this, because at the end of that meeting, we're going to come to some agreements that what we agreed to when you were hired is not taking place. And so now what we're going to do is say, here's the things you're doing well. Here's the things where we're not meeting expectations. I'm going to ask for any type of feedback. Am I not doing what I promised? Are we not matching that 401k contribution? Am I not doing something? Do you not have a newer model van? Do you not have inventory? Are we not getting you paid on time? Is your check not cashing? Whatever those things are, it's a come to, kind of like a come to Jesus, so to speak, and a meeting of the minds to say, let's hit the reset button. But if you can't do this over the next 30 days, what you're communicating to me is that I want this for you, more for you than you want it for you.
What's
and
your
that comes down to effort.
What do you think your percentage of people that you end up putting on a PIP of some sort come out the other side? Because I had
99%, because I'm gonna scare the hell out of these guys before they ever take the job with me, so they know what they're getting into. So I'm gonna head that off at the pass. If a guy doesn't think that he can show up on time or tuck in his uniform or wear his badge or trim his beard, make it look intentional, I don't care about the tats and the beards and the hats. It's got to be a company hat. I mean, I had a guy one time trying to wear a Raiders hat in Denver. I'm not the biggest Bronco fan on the planet, but come on, you're gonna wear a Raiders hat out in Denver?
Yeah. Not smart. You're not going to gain a whole lot of, it's like walking around in Dallas and wearing an Eagles hat.
Right.
Ironically, I worked with a service manager who actually was a diehard Eagles fan. He had a tattoo on his arm that was a humongous Eagles logo. The irony of this is that he was a very successful service technician, which I couldn't understand. I would have thought it would have rubbed people the wrong way, but apparently he was able to overcome it with whatever personality. Probably started a lot of conversations like, oh, I see all the Dallas Cowboys stuff over here. It's kind of weird. So as we're talking about, you have a lot of insight on the business side of things. I'm wondering, do you have an experience on, I think everybody knows I ask this on every episode, what is one experience that you had? I try to keep it to like a customer experience that lives with you wherever you go.
I have heard you ask other guests on your podcast. If I listen to the number of your other ones this past week, is it okay if I share 2? I'll do a customer experience first.
I would love more than one. Yeah.
And then an employee experience, because I don't want to sound like a real hard ass with what I just described a minute ago. I think it's about clear communication. Customer experience, one of the ones that really resonates with me is I had a comfort advisor call me out to a job where people were using their oven as their heating unit in Denver, right? I mean, we have nights where, we'll get down to 10 below when those Canadian cold fronts come screaming down the Rocky Mountain Front Range. It can get really cold. Usually our winters are pretty mild, but all of a sudden you get that 7 to 10 days where those temps really drop down. And this man and his wife, with 4 small children, were huddled on the kitchen floor in the evenings around an oven to heat their home with. As you can hear, the danger in that, and 4 little ones. And it's like you realize the amount of struggle that some people are going through. And I think sometimes we forget that. We think our struggle's bad because people are telling us they got to think about it, or price is too high, or they need more bids, or they're not familiar with our brand. And don't get me wrong, those are challenges. But I do things where I invest time looking at how the rest of the world lives. I'm not sure if many of our viewers know this, but if you earn $32,000, you're in the top 1% of income earners worldwide. Now, $32,000 in the United States might put you in a poverty level, but worldwide, you're one of the top 1% of money earners. And so I look at that and I say, what is our perspective, and how do we go out and we serve people? We have to realize that there is true struggle going on out there. For that family, we just installed a brand new furnace for them, absolutely free, brought it up to code and took care of them. I think when you run a business, and you make sure that you're running on margins and you're holding your team accountable, when you come upon a situation like that, you can do that. There's other customers where something that will live with me forever. And I try to have conversations with our clients all the time. We can't get into this customer hating mentality either, right? We had a customer that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and we had the proof, he made friends with our comfort advisor, and that comfort advisor and him cooked up a plan. In fact, he knew him and came in, acted like they didn't know us anyway. We have a buy it back guarantee, an unconditional money back guarantee for a 1 year on our installs with my company, where we won Lennox Partner of the Year. Well, unbeknownst to me, we went out there and we missed the asbestos on purpose, meaning that our comfort advisor was in on the shtick with a friend of his and said, "Hey, this company that I work for," it was a newer comfort advisor. To this day, I still can't believe it. You can never guard against a person like that completely when it comes to their character, that they would do something like that to us. When we found it out, we had to get rid of that comfort advisor. But we changed out all the ductwork.
Are you sure it was intentional? Could you prove that it was intentional? Because sometimes they don't recognize the asbestos. If it was a new comfort advisor, clearly you knew it was, obviously it would be. Yeah.
The problem is, what we realized was this comfort advisor was friends with the guy that knew he had asbestos, and then we sent the whole thing through for a lead. I mean, so it's like, listen, we can go to one end of the spectrum and say there's families out there that are really struggling and they're heating themselves and their children with an open oven in the kitchen. On the other end of the spectrum, are there customers that will take advantage of us as contractors? Yes, but I'm not going to build my company based on the one guy and the one comfort advisor that got over on us, right? Yeah. We did do about $18,000 worth of asbestos removal and ductwork in a crawl space, because we had already touched it. And so we didn't find out that we'd been duped until after the fact, and it was all done. And, the comfort advisor made a comment to somebody, and then, it's a small world these days. Anyway, we found out the truth, had to let go of the comfort advisor. I still know where the guy lives. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. But here's what I will say that I choose to believe. I choose to believe that we as humans are inherently good, that we don't wake up every day thinking about how we can screw people over. Are there people out there like that? Yes. But if I put that in my mind every day, there's no way I can go out and serve people with passion. So I've got to work on my mindset. I've got to work on how I'm going to go to market, how I'm going to serve, the conversations I'm going to have, and how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. I can also say this: a lot of our people in the trades come from a military background. My father came from a military background, committed suicide 20 years ago. I have a former, listen, those things happen. Life is hard. We better be prepared. We don't know what our next challenge is. But what I've found is everywhere I go, Everett, every person I meet that I have the ability or the time to get to know somebody, the people I learn about have more strife and more struggle than we can imagine. At my first HVAC company in Colorado Springs, HVAC and plumbing, former military Marine sniper, he took his life, and he left a wife and 2 kids under the age of 10 behind. I had a comfort advisor after I left my company in Denver, took his life. Had an install manager after I left that company in February of 2020, drank himself to death.
You've been hearing this. I've been hearing this so often in our field recently. And I know it's rampant probably, in a lot of places and a lot of industries, but for some reason, I don't know why, I've just been seeing post after post after post of guys in our industry that are just, they're not making it. They're taking their lives.
I think I have a pretty good idea, Everett, and I don't want to, put a damper on the podcast today, but I will say,
let's get real. Let's just get real.
Mental health, right? Mental health is vitally important. And I will say this is why I'm really big on habit 5 and the 7 habits. Seek first to understand. Typically what I've found is when I have a technician or a CSR, somebody, we'll just say kind of acting a fool, right? They're refusing to do their on-call. They're not tucking in their shirt. They're showing up late for meetings. They're pushing back on processes. Every single time when I've taken the time to invest and figure out what's going on in that person's life, it typically turns out that they're facing some pretty tough stuff. They've either gotten a bad health diagnosis, their wife has asked them for a divorce, their previous spouse is saying that if you miss another one of Johnny's games, you will never see him again. I find that over and over, and I can also tell you this, because my father took his own life, and because I share some of these stories at my live events, to an event, Everett, almost every single event, I have people that come up to me that either say they've been there, they are there, or their brother or their father or somebody else in their life took their own life. It does run rampant. And all I can say is, if we have a little bit bigger heart, and instead of just being frustrated that our guys didn't show up for a meeting, let's have the wherewithal and the strength to say, hey man, I don't know what's going on. Let's get together. Let's grab lunch. Let's grab dinner. Let's see if we can come to an agreement on how we're going to solve this challenge. And sometimes, listen, we can't save everybody. But again, it comes down to effort. If I'm willing to invest my time, maybe help that person get the help that they need, because I'm not a licensed psychotherapist or a psychologist, I'm just going to try to have a big heart. But over time, if that person's not willing to do whatever it takes from his end and be a great teammate to us and the rest of the team, then I have no choice but to say, that's not a good fit for our culture here. But I don't think that takes years. It certainly doesn't take many months. I think it just takes more honesty and integrity, and the willingness to sit down with somebody and say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Can we work on this together? And then if they're not willing to do it, then that's on them. It's not on me. I got to give them every benefit of the doubt.
What's your biggest fear right now?
Right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like personally, man, you're getting real with me.
Well, that's part of this podcast is getting beyond listen, you built some great businesses. You're incredible at what you do. It's a part of you, but what's your biggest fear right now?
I'm a workaholic. I stopped drinking years ago. I was a tough guy when I was 32. I had blood in my stool, have a bout of diverticulitis, went to the doctor. I happened to see a female doctor that day, and she just said, Doug, a little bit of blood in the stool. Well, I was a tough guy. 3 days later, I was rushed to the emergency room and fought for my life for 3 days in ICU, as I almost bled to death trying to be a tough guy. So I faced death in that respect, almost just being a tough guy. I think my biggest fear, because I'm a divorce guy, I'm a empty nester. And my first marriage lasted 12 years. And then my second marriage relationship was 13 years. I've raised 2 different families. Biggest fear, I think, is probably dying alone because I work too much, to be honest with you. My second wife, Elizabeth, and I, we had a great relationship. We were kind of like the power couple. She had mortgage businesses in many different states and was doing incredibly well on her own. And then I started, working in the all-natural sleep aid, was building an HVAC and plumbing business, and that time an HVAC business. And I was starting a training organization. And one day she just said, Doug, when is enough enough? I want a divorce. And I said, you want a divorce? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, let's get counseling. And she said, I bought a house. And so that was devastating. You know, it was a woman I loved and I thought I was going to grow old with.
When was that? When was this?
February of 2020. Same
Wow.
reason, same time I exited the trades and went and built that sleep aid. So I would just say this for all of us out there. I think, you know, being a provider is important. Financial support, financial stability is important. But I will also say we can't go too far one way on that spectrum and just say, oh, we're going to make so much money and we're going to have these great businesses. Let's not forget what really matters. And that's our relationships with the people we care about most, our significant other, our kids, and those sort of things. So I don't know. I think, what do I fear most? Everett, I'm 49 years old. And despite the fact that I don't have to work to pay the bills right now, I still am working 12, 14 hours a day because I'm so driven to serve the trades and finish out these programs and create this 1-year path to mastery.
What would you do? What would you do if, you know, hey, you're not doing the training anymore. You're not doing what'd you do? What would you do if you were like, you know what?
I can't do it, Everett. I tried.
I'm not working. I'm going to take a year and I'm not going to work. I'm not going to work on anything. I'm going to sell my business, whatever it is. What would you do?
Great question. Well, I did that a few years ago. So here we are. We're shooting this podcast here in September of 2024. In a 30-day period, I exited my company under distress. Couldn't come to an agreement with a business partner on the way that we should handle a team member that also was a bloodline. And a week later, started down the pathway to divorce. And so I did plow myself into work for a couple of months on that sleep aid. And then I took a 1-month sabbatical. I had a place in Mexico at the time, and I went down to Playa del Carmen. And I took about a month-long sabbatical to get clear on what I wanted out of my life. I decided,
because you don't drink, right? Because you're sober.
Stop drinking.
Yeah. So what do you? I mean, the reason why I say that is because people go down to Mexico. Sometimes they go on benders. They drink, and it's margaritas, you know, injected into the veins. So what'd you do? You scuba dive? You snorkel? What'd you do?
I went to, if you've ever heard of a sweat lodge, it is not what people in America think of a sweat lodge. They think of like cucumbers and sauna, right? Yeah. I went down and lived with the locals. I wasn't on a resort. I went into the rougher parts of Playa del Carmen, and I did some things. Went out to some cenotes and floated out in the ocean in the middle of the night under the moonlight, and really just started thinking about contemplating my life. I was 45 at the time, and I said, what are my next 45 to 50 years going to be like? And what's my legacy going to be? Because we can't take it with us, right? And so I got to be honest with you, that time I had away from the trades, I really realized how much I miss the men and women of the trades, especially the men looking back at me at those live events. And I'll say this, Everett, I think my worst experience that I have to this day was going into these live events and having people come up to me and saying, wow, this is different and this is life-changing. This is going to change everything about everything. And then running into those folks 6 months or a year later at the next trade show or the next expo or the next event, and them kind of dipping down an aisle or their eyes darting as we talked. And it's not because they didn't want it, but they fell off track, right? And they didn't implement, and maybe they're not any better. And so and
because of your personality and how fiery you are, like I could see that. I could see people like, oh, we didn't implement it. But at the end of the day, you know what? I'm going to make an astute observation. It's definitely not about the money at all. I think that, you know what drives Doug? I think that it is the light bulbs going off. I think that you do genuinely want to create success in other people. I think I look at you and I see this. I actually, and I rarely see this. I don't really know. There's a selfish motivation in everything we do. But I think that your selfish motivation probably stems from the fact that, yes, you've done the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You're a coach for that. And watching the light bulbs go off. And I subscribe to the same things. That's one of my favorite sort of, philosophies. I've gone down it. I've taught it much like you have to my teams. And it's outside of my job description, but I think building people is, I'd rather build a person. I'd rather build the person, and I think you'd rather build the person. So, but
Agreed.
then I go back to this library, Doug, and I know you're fired up. I know you want to say something right now, but I have to say, and I've actually probably spoken less in this podcast than I've had in any other, because you got so much boom like happening, right? But I would say that that's a unique quality, because you're not motivated by the money, because you've done, I mean, you've done really well. So this is definitely passion. So I would say, not to plug your business, but if I was going to learn from somebody, right, I would probably want somebody when if their intentions were, sort of, straight and narrow, morally sound, and actually come from a place of like, I really want to freaking help people. I really want to like get inside your brain. And yeah, anyway, that's my observation of you.
Everett, you're a guy that looks like you belong on a bodybuilding stage. And so I'm going to assume you go to the gym quite often. Here's the thing. Most of us know what it would take to become a bodybuilder, right? There's very few of us that are doing that. In fact, the gyms will be full on January 1 and through the first couple of weeks this coming year, just like they always are. And by the end of February, middle of March, they'll be right back to the way they always were. Maybe we get one additional person that really stays committed in every gym. But for the most part, by the time we get through the end of March, it's back to the same characters, right? And so I looked at that and I'm like, why is it, no matter how great the content is, no matter how inspired someone becomes, why is it that just like the gym, we know what we should be doing in order to get the results that we desire, but we stop doing it? And it's human nature, right? It's the mystery of our human
It's hard work, Doug. That's why.
It is hard work.
Because people are allergic. It's hard work. It hurts. When my muscles are sore after I'm done at the gym, I fucking love it. I love it. I wake up the next day in pain sometimes, and I'm like, it hurts. But
you've created that habit, right? And so here's what I did. When I went and did that soul searching and did that sabbatical in Mexico, and I said, what is the rest of my life going to be like? If I'm not going to just work for money, if I'm going to really work for legacy and what I believe I've seen in my first 45 years of where I could truly add value, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and I'm going to build my own green screen studio. I'm going to hire my own master of videography. We since recruited 11 video editors around the world. We're providing great employment to folks around the world, and they're working 40 hours a week. And we're paying them above average wage for where they are. And so now what we've done is we've accumulated thousands of videos with full KPIs. And what I did was, it wasn't still enough to just put all of our live event content on video. We had to do it in an engaging way. We had to create micro learning segments that were interactive, that engaged and entertained, made people laugh, perhaps made people cry. Perhaps, like Simon Sinek would say, start with why. What are you really doing this for? Why are you willing to get up so early? Why are you willing? Yes. Why are we willing to stay up late? All the books that I've read, I've accumulated all that and said, how do we apply this to the trades so that other people can experience what very few of us have? And it's about doing some things different until that becomes the habit. So here's what I did.
I got to ask a quick question because of, and we're going long here. So it's okay.
Right. We can wrap it up. By the way, I saw Josh Crouch in the thing here saying that they're in the program, and it's one of the best testimonials I could get, because Josh is a straight shooter. And
for those that don't know, so Josh and Tersh specifically was very instrumental in me starting this podcast, and they were very helpful, especially Tersh. He really helped me out, and so I owe them a lot, and I've been on their podcast a couple times. To those listening, watching, Doug's training is absolutely legit. We use it and love it. My question is this, and this was, I hope it's not too, I'm not gonna pull punches. Is there a world that you think that there's so much content that for some people it's daunting? That is there a level of product, or do you think that you will come to a point where you start to actually remove videos and pull stuff out and maybe separate it off, or splice it or shorten it or make it more palpable? Not that it's not, because the videos are obviously short, easy to swallow, easy to do, right? But do you ever think that there's just so much that it'll get to a point like, man, this library is just too big?
Yes. And so we combat that. And here's how we did it. Imagine this, Everett. You have somebody that's invested in the gym down the street from your house. They've went and put $1 million worth of gym equipment. They've signed a lease. They have their lights on. They have their membership, their software to track all of it. And you start going to the gym in January, and then you stop going in February. The gym still wasn't enough. For most of us in the human race, you know what we also have to do? We have to hire a coach that meets you there and says, this is what we're going to work on today. Today, we're doing bis and tris. Tomorrow, we're doing legs. The next day, we're doing chest. And the next day, we're doing some cardio, whatever it might be, right? That's what we created. You are absolutely right. The amount of content that we've been working to create over the last 3 years is daunting. And so what we're doing now is we're producing small micro learning segments where we take a deeper dive every single week. Every single week, we work towards mastery in every one of our departments. We have a small micro segment of learning that every single team member for their department has to work on for 7 days before the next meeting. This is the same thing that I did at my company. I hear this all the time. My guys don't want to role play. We hate role play. Well, I think the number one reason is nobody likes to be surprised, including me. I like to be ultimately prepared. Everett, if I came to one of your live training events, and you've been one of the number one salespeople in the entire country at one of the best organizations and franchises in the country, as I understand it, I followed your career. If I came to your training, Everett, and you said, okay, here's the way I would present this. Now, you try it. I'm going to be out of sorts. I'm going to be miserable. But Everett, if you said, Doug, here's 60 seconds, 90 seconds of the entryway presentation, and here's 90 seconds of how we address this area of concern, I'll see you back here in 7 days. Everett, I am going to have it knocked out word
just
word.
Work. Yeah, just work on little nibbles.
Everett, I will know it as well as you know it. My pride is now at stake. I gave you my word. I'm going to do it. What one man can do, I can do. So that's what we're creating now. Instead of having this overwhelming amount of content, it's like you go through the 3-day full immersion or 4-day full immersion live, or you can go through the full immersion to start in the virtual. But that's not enough. Just like the gym and the equipment and the software, that's not enough. We've got to have somebody then creating weekly, manageable micro-learning segments. My thing is, it's not about where you are today or next week or next month. My thing is if we dedicate 1 year of our life to learning and mastering these small, manageable, bite-sized chunks every single week, we will look up 1 year from now absolutely astounded and amazed at what we've accomplished.
Different person. You'll be a different person. Yeah, you'll be a different person.
Tony Robbins says, one of the things Tony Robbins said at the first event of his I went to when I was 20 years old, he said, we drastically overestimate what we can accomplish in a week, and we drastically underestimate what we can accomplish in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that movie, I've listened to so many Tony Robbins, and I've actually watched, like, I can tell you something right now. And I think motivational speaking in general, you have to work on it in order for it to be lasting, because sometimes, like, because it's emotion, right? And you ride high when you leave these events, and then all of a sudden you're like, you don't apply it into your life. That's why I kind of like data-based sort of things. I'm really a big fan of Clifton Strengths 2. I mean, I love Strength Finder. It's one of my favorite. But Tony Robbins' short film on Netflix, I'm Not Your Guru, actually changed my viewpoint on things. And I had my mother passed away. I miss her, but we had a strained relationship. That movie helped me get past things. So there's a value in, like, sort of like investing in yourself and personal growth and personal development, leading me to my next question. And then kind of we'll sign off here, because we've been going long. I could do this for 3 or 4 hours with you, Doug. What's the goal right now? But rapid fire, like, where are you going? What's the vision?
The legacy I want to leave in the trades is for hundreds of thousands of men and women to say, Doug not only inspired me that I could be more, do more, accomplish more than I ever thought I could accomplish, be a better husband, be a better wife, be a better husband, be a better father, be a better mother, be a better daughter, But he also didn't leave me hanging after the live event. He followed up with me. He provided a path. He helped me all along the way. I want my legacy in the trades to be that he truly cared, that he really invested himself in others' success. Goes to the Zig Ziglar quote, right? Can have everything you want in your life if you help other people get what they want. Sure. That's the goal. How do we help others break through? Because there's so much clutter and crap, especially in our trades, that I don't want to be a salesman. And we are our own worst enemies. We've got everybody holding us accountable to those whiteboards and those, the Service Titan and the Field Edge and the Sarah printouts and all of that stuff, right? But then at the same time, we're in conflict because we say, oh, well, me and none of the fellows want to be in sales. And so it's a dichotomy that we're up against every single day. I want to make it cool to live our life with passion. I want to make it the in crowd that we are good with effort, and that when we walk into that training room once a week, that we have absolutely delivered and improved ourselves, and that we're not worried about the guys that don't care, that haven't found their why, that they're laughing at us and going, oh, teacher's pet or whatever. I want to make it cool to give effort and say, you know what, when we get down to the end and we get to that rocking chair principle, or it's our final days when it's too late, that we don't have regret, that now it's too late and I can't go back and get a redo. That's my thing. Inspire people, but then show them the path and follow up with them every single week so that they're not left to their own devices trying to find their own motivation every single week. Give them an assignment every week that's manageable, that they can master.
How many companies, this is my last question, and then I'm going to have you plug where to find Synergy Systems. I'm imagining you'd like them to go to your website. How many companies right now are you, like, what's the path for how many companies you can train, how many events that you do? And is there like a larger scale event that you're looking to put together with, like, more, just more?
Yeah, this past year we do regional events. So we do technician events, sales events for comfort advisors that are selling larger scale projects. We just did a call center event last week, so we do those. And then twice a year we do a 7 Habits leadership event customized for the trades. As far as those events, most of our events have been somewhere between the range of about 30 to 75 people. We could do much bigger, but I will say this, I cannot accomplish what I really want to accomplish in those training events if we don't do them for 3 or 4 days. And so that becomes the challenge, right? And that's another reason why we put the virtual program together. If you're not at a point where you can block somebody out, sometimes I have a lot of business owners say, Doug, back when I was doing more private on-sites, we don't have a lot of time to do these now. For the right opportunity, we might go and look at doing one or two of those. But, I look at that and I go, we put the virtual training on there. It's a very low, affordable monthly rate. And if you do go to synergylearningsystems.net and you go to the programs page, the second video down is literally a miniature movie that outlines everything about that program. And then the investment page literally talks about the exact investment. And we're in pre-launch. It's incredibly affordable. It's a couple $100 a week with a test drive. So I think the answer to your question is the live events can continue to grow, and the number of people that we can train. I mean, listen, if it's me and I'm a technician and I'm getting tripped up by bids and brand installs and got to think about it and talk to the spouse, there's no way I'm listening to Metallica or Rob Linus right now. Rob was great, right? But there's no way I'm listening to that until I've mastered my craft. Every once in a while, every week or two, I might listen to a little bit of music. But until I've mastered my craft in the way that I'm going to take care of my family and my life and my responsibilities, I'm not doing much of anything else. Listen, if we're running 4 calls a day, why would we not invest the next 6 months or a year to absolutely master it? You know what? I got bad news. It might mean that we just pretend that there was a lockout season and we didn't watch any football this year. Maybe we didn't do our fantasy football league. I'm probably a lot of people's worst enemy right now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
hey.
I always become torn on this topic too, because I do believe in the recharge, and I do believe that there's, I always performed better even when I'd listen to fiction sometimes. And I've read all the books you referenced, all the books you've referenced today. I've read them all. Like, so
okay, for everybody that hasn't read every book that I've referenced,
No, I get it. No. You're right. You're right. So I think it goes back to investing in yourself for certainty.
Let me say this. Can I say this? Listen, we all need a little bit of downtime. I'm not saying that we can't Netflix and chill occasionally, right? I'm not saying
use your time,
but
you can use your time wisely. But you can use your time
what
wisely.
What I am saying is if you're spending your afternoon watching college football on Saturday and NFL football on Sunday, and you're watching Monday Night Football on Monday, and you're watching Thursday Night Football on Thursday, and then you're also playing the fantasy football leagues, and your rent is late, and your mortgages, you want to buy a house, and the spouse is complaining about not being able to afford the groceries, and your car's breaking down, it's time to put the damn TV remote down and punch the audible clock and start improving ourselves for the next 6 months to a year. I mean, listen, if your life is where your life is, Everett, great. If you've been the number one salesperson in the country like you have, great. If you've read all the books that we've read.
Number 11. I wasn't number one.
I don't believe it. Show me the other 10. I can't believe anybody could beat you. Nobody's better than you, Everett.
Dude, come on, man. I think there's somebody here in the group in the chat today that actually is anyway.
Let's have it. Hey,
Doug,
listen, here's the thing.
Doug, where are people finding you? Tell people where they're going to find you. I think the audio on this is going to be really popular. Tell them where they can find you. What's the best way to reach you in order to, if they want to get, they want to get involved with Synergy, they want to send their text, they want to send their CSR agents, reps. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can hit me up with a DM on Facebook. I'm easy to find. Doug Wyatt, Synergy Learning Systems. Our website, be very careful. It's synergylearningsystems.net, not .com. It's synergylearningsystems.net. If you end up at .com, I've been trying to get that, but those folks in SoCal also have a leadership training program. They've been in business 20 years. So I haven't been able to get to .com.
Oh, no.
So just make sure, synergylearningsystems.net, fill out a contact us form, hit me up in my DMs on Facebook, Instagram's Doug S. Wyatt, Facebook Doug Wyatt. I would absolutely be honored. Anything we can do to help the trades and help people increase their lot in life with integrity, that's what we're all about. And I think we're going to do it in a very big way.
This has been awesome. I'm going to end it here. Sweet. Doug, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you, man. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Everett.
Anything else? You're good.
I appreciate you, brother. Can I have the final word?
Yes, go. You have the final word.
Dude, you are amazing. You never know where life is going to take you. And the fact that a guy like you with all of your success invited me onto your podcast, man, I tell you, I'm never going to forget where I came from. And I mean every word of this, dude. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate people like Josh and Tersh and Brian and Nate and just all these folks, that have had me on. Just you can do anything in your life if you set your mind to it and you never give up. And that goes for every one of our listeners here tonight. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you, buddy.